Hello and welcome to the Stockholm Resilience Centre. We're here with Beatrice Crona and we're going to talk a bit about her research. Hello Bea, who are you and how would you describe yourself?
Well, I'm Beatrice Crona. I've been at the centre since 2008 when I returned from a postdoc at Arizona State University. And I describe myself as a jack of all trade and a master of none in some sense, but I also think that's my strength. I'm a very transdisciplinary environmental or sustainability scientist, and I have a background in the natural sciences, marine ecology and systems ecology, but have since tried to broaden out and have used various types of social sciences, political science, sociology, anthropology, and more recently sort of economic geography to address the things that I find interesting, sustainability challenges.
And as a jack of all trades researcher, could you talk a bit about some of your research? We probably don't have time to get into all of it.
No, and I think I decided that I wanted to talk about two things that are very much work in progress, but which I then subsequently am quite excited about. And the first one would be something that I am doing and developing in close collaboration with Victor Galas, also here at the center, and which has to do with trying to make explicit the links between the biosphere and the financial sector. And what I mean by that is that it's clear that the financial sector and how we invest money is going to affect the environment. But I think how sustainability is being viewed and addressed primarily in the financial sector now, or has been up until now, has been very much focused on, well, first of all, impact investment. So how can we address it? Well, through impact investment.
What is impact investment?
Impact investment is, very simply put, when you create, say, like a bond, or you invest in some kind of project, for example, a project that would plant trees to increase carbon uptake. They're rather small scale, or they tend to be small scale, and if we look at the bulk of the money being invested in those kinds of impact compared to the bulk of investments that are being made, broadly across the world, it's a minute fraction. It's something in the order of less than 1%, 0.2% or something like that, even though it is increasing. So we felt that we wanted to focus more on the mainstream, the bulk of the financial capital that's flowing around. And when you go there, you look and you see that a lot of the work is focusing on carbon emissions reductions, which is fantastic because of course we need to reduce emissions. But at the same time, we're at a point now where we have released a lot of carbon in the atmosphere, and temperatures are rising and are going to be rising no matter, even if we stopped everything today. And so we need to also make sure that we are bolstering the resilience of some of the key elements on our planet that can sustain, particularly the climate, stabilize the climate. And so we are building very much on work in the Earth system science field, which is not our field, but where people have identified so-called sort of tipping elements that in the Earth's climate system. And these are areas or biomes or regions on the planet which are believed to, if they tip, can really have significant impact on the climate. It's places like the Amazon, kind of iconic, but also the Arctic sea ice, the boreal forests in Russia and Canada, and multiple others. And there are mechanisms like, for example, if the Amazon was to be deforested to a point where they believe it's something like 40%, then it could start to self-reinforcing, become drier and drier and turn into savanna. And that would fundamentally affect our climate, because it's important for hydrological cycling, but also for carbon uptake. So our interest is really in seeing how is the financial sector linked to these tipping elements, and what could they do, what are they doing now, and what could they do differently to really bolster the resilience in this and help stabilize the climate rather than undermine it.
Okay, that's great. And this is a work in progress, so there's more to come.
There's more to come.
Yes, and you wanted to talk about a second part of your research that you're working on currently. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Yes, and that's, I have a background in marine ecology, so fish or marine systems are close to my heart. And The, I guess, exciting thing that I feel is useful also for society now that we're working on is, together with my PhD students and also master students, is looking at fisheries value chains. So supply chains that supply fish to society. And I recognize, and I've spent a lot of my career thinking about fisheries regulations, and we do need regulation. I'm not diminishing that, but we can't only rely on the regulations. We need to face the fact that a lot of fisheries are difficult to regulate, and we have not been entirely successful. So we need to complement that with more market-based mechanisms, and we have been working or collaborating, at least in terms of thinking about this, with a business NGO called the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership. And they, along with others like WWF, are organizations that are trying to use the supply chains to push various means of changing behavior by using retailers and suppliers and kind of pushing requirements down the supply chain to fishers. And so what we're doing is trying to study these, see how have these panned out? How are they working? What strategies seem to be working, and what actors seem to be doing these strategies? And so that actor-strategy combinations, which ones are successful, which ones are not so successful, and what can we learn from this as we go forward to really try to make a change for sustainability in the fisheries sector.
Could you share some of the strategies that you are working on right now, or is that still to come?
Well, it's not strategies that we're working on, it's what they are doing, and we're just studying what they're doing and trying to make sense and see patterns of what's successful and what isn't in which contexts, because it is highly context dependent when you work with particularly small-scale fisheries. And so I can't really at this point, because it's about almost pattern finding, and we're in that process now, and we hope that as we get there, that could be some really interesting lessons learned for the industry as well.
Okay, that's great. And we have one more question for you. Who is a woman that inspires you in your work?
So I've been thinking about this question that you gave me to think about earlier, and I couldn't come up with a single person, because I think, there's a lot of women that inspire me all the time. Frances Wesley is perhaps an obvious person. I think she's inspired many people here at the Centre, both through the content of her work, the legacy of her thinking around institutional entrepreneurship and agency, which I use in my work, but also as a sort of mentor in thinking about how to be as a woman scientist in a fairly male-dominated world. Not so much anymore, but it used to be. And another person which I was recently inspired by at the Resilience Conference in one of her talks was Brigitte Baptiste, who I think embodies a really, what's possible and how change is possible in many different ways. So I think that was very inspirational, and is someone I'm kind of watching from afar because I don't know her. And then I think just the women that I have around me in my everyday life, like my women or female PhD students and my female research assistants, which I think are amazingly brilliant and do a lot of really good work without which I couldn't really function, which they inspire me. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.